Alright, so today we shall cover the most confusing and inconsistent thing in all 40k. That being, how do destiny, future foresight and time travel work in Warhammer? Now, the meta reason for the confusion and the inconsistencies is that because Games Workshop has multiple writers that write their own separate stories, they tend to sometimes forget or just not know in the first place how 40k Galaxy works, thus making mistakes in their works. One of the best recent and clearest being the Sisters of Battle having the ability to use powers drawn from the warp in Pariah Nexus. You know, the place where those things shouldn't be fucking possible. The way in which Games Workshop gets around this is by saying everything is canon but not everything is true. Basically meaning take the explanation that you like and discard the instances that discredit your explanation as errors in writing of an in-universe scribe. You see, it's not Games Workshop fucking up their lore, it's Dave from Administratum fucking up his homework. With that being said, in recent years Games Workshop seems to have solidified on one explanation, so in this video I shall be giving you two. First Games Workshop explanation and then my own, so let's get into it. The most recent Games Workshop explanation is that of infinite futures that narrow down to a point the closer you get to an event. This is the explanation provided in the Horus Heresy books. Biggie could see the future, but only the broad strokes of it, not specific events. He knew Horus Heresy would happen, but not who would be on whose side, nor how it would play out. Basically, he knew a clusterfuck was coming, but he didn't know the full extent of it. Alright, so for real, there are two ways to interpret this infinite number of future paths thing. The more simple explanation is that there is a single linear timeline that cannot be changed, meaning that things are destined and set in stone to happen, with no ability to be changed. This is the type of scenario where although you can still travel back and forth in time, you cannot create paradoxes. So if you wanted to, let's say, go into the past and kill your granddad, you can't, because that would create a paradox. Thus the universe will do everything in order to stop you, either killing you through accidents or making you change your mind. In this explanation, Farseers, Emperor, Curse aren't actually seeing the future, they're just calculating what are the odds that some things are gonna happen, of course using the warp. So let's say the Emperor needs to know whether or not you're gonna withdraw money from a bank today. This is crucial information because he needs to know whether or not you're gonna buy his biggie shitcoin. He would first calculate what are the odds of you waking up, then what are the odds of you eating breakfast, what kind of mood will that set you in. These are all the factors that will affect your final choice, and they are quite easy to gauge. I mean, the Emperor is a super genius, predicting actions of a single human being aren't that hard. Where it becomes difficult is when he has to figure out actions of gazillions of humans, as well as the odds that they might change their routine at any moment, which might cause a further avalanche of cause and effects that will massively alter the final result. Now, I think you can already think of at least a couple of instances in war that contradict this explanation. Just to name two in my mind, there was an orc that traveled back in time only to kill his former self to get himself another one of his favorite shootas, or that one time that the machine spirit of a Mechanicus exploration ship awakened and used a weapon that teleported an Eldar ship from the past into present to crash into the ship from the present in order for them to destroy each other. Now, if you like this explanation of a set in stone destiny, you can just discredit these with faulty records keeping or unreliable documentation of the Administratum. But if you don't like the set in stone timeline, let me introduce you to the second explanation, or the interpretation of infinite futures. So the second explanation is that of infinite realities. Yeah, we are going to worst thing that has happened to modern movies for this one, the multiverse. Second explanation posits that infinite realities exist, which are all connected and branch out one from another, kind of like tree roots but infinite. Think of it this way, there is one line. You have to choose what will you put on your pizza. Are you gonna be Arkham Asylum's next patient and put pineapples, or are you gonna be a sane individual and put lemons? Your actions are gonna create two timelines, the sane and insane one. This also explains time travel. When you travel through time, you don't actually travel through time, but rather dimensions, and get transferred to an alternate reality with everything being the same except the time, thus allowing you you to kill yourself and steal your own gun. This also explains Chaos Gods, because all realities are connected through the warp. So Chaos Gods can just send some of their power from one reality to another, thus being able to participate in conflicts such as the war in heaven despite not having been born yet. Now I'm gonna do the cardinal sin and say that yes, 40k and fantasy are in fact connected. There's just too much evidence for them not to be. Let me explain to you how and why. I'll keep it brief because mostly 40k viewers watch my content. In the beginning of the fantasy, there were frogmen, called the Old Ones. Sound familiar, doesn't it? They brought with them spores that turned into orcs. They escaped into fantasy's reality because they were being hunted by something, which later turned out to be Chaos Gods. Now, as to not bore you, I'm gonna skip right to the end times to provide you with some more evidence for this theory. Basically, after Chaos Gods destroyed the world with their champions, led by Archaon, they fucked off to somewhere. So where did they go? Well, in Age of Sigmar, it is stated that whilst they were gone, Archaon the Ever-Chosen, basically the Chaos War Master of Fantasy, was ending realities. Now, the only way for him to end realities is for him to be able to travel through them. In saying this, I'm not a big fan of the multiverse. I'm just kinda sick of it because it removes any kind of stakes due to there always being a reality where a character doesn't die or the event doesn't happen. So my theory is a combination of all of the previous explanations combined together. Let me explain. I still believe that 40k has a linear timeline, but future seers such as Zinch can't actually see the future. They just have to make an educated guess. Quite a good guess on things in the near future, but guess nonetheless. The reason why they can't 100% guess what's exactly going to happen is due to souls. If every human was a biological robot, aka a blank with no soul, it would be relatively easy to predict what are they gonna do. If you had a bacteria and place a food source next to it, you don't have to be a farseer to see what's gonna happen next. The bacteria is gonna eat the food because its genes tell it to do so. Same applies to humans. If you dissect their genes using war powers, you can predict outcome of their life. This would be great and all if it wasn't for humans having souls. Souls allow you to, at least in my opinion, to bypass your genetic dispositions. So if you had genes that made you a violent criminal, if your willpower, aka soul, is strong enough, you can bypass your biological limitations. And again, your ability to bypass those genetic traits is directly tied to the size or power of your soul. So let's say if Kurz was fighting a guardsman. Okay, fighting may not be the right word. If Kurtz was toying with a guardsman, whose soul would be quite tiny, thus being heavily dominated by the body, aka genes, he would have easy time dodging and predicting next move without effort. But when it comes to people such as the lion, things change drastically. Whereas in the instance of a guardsman, where body was just housing a soul, Primarchs are probably minor warp gods, so their bodies are not as much housing a soul, but rather getting puppeteered by. I think this is one of the reasons why porn addicts who call themselves Eldar have such powerful souls. Of course, using war powers is one of them, but another also impactful feature is that it would be harder for Catan to realize and predict what they would do, because they couldn't just reuse the realities of the Eldar biology, they also had to take into account the unrealities of the Eldar's powerful souls. Now yeah, this theory does have a couple of holes, like the Mechanica ship and the Orc time travel examples, so I guess I just have to forfeit and just accept the fact that 40k does indeed have a multiverse. But anyway, if you like this video, smash like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, goodbye.